I'm Pastor Marla, coming to you from the Fireside room at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Ummelin, Minnesota, for our weekly Fireside chat. Thanks for joining us today. About 16 days ago, the world heard of the death of George Floyd in Minnesota. It first came in the local news, then the national news, and then spread throughout the international news. People throughout the world have become aware of this killing of this black man. A friend of mine has a daughter who lives in Germany, and she told me that George Floyd's picture is now on the Berlin Wall in Germany, or what's left of the Berlin Wall. Those who watched George's funeral yesterday are probably aware that the president of Ghana has made a special plaque to be in the African nation of Ghana in the W.E.B. Du Bois Center, listing George's name. This has gotten a lot of attention around the world, much more than we often get in response to such incidents. And I think this one was just so clearly wrong. It was so clearly unjust, and it has become a point that has united the world in seeking justice. What do we think about this as Christians? Well, as Christians, we know that we have a God of love, a God who loved the whole world so much that he sent his son Jesus so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. God's love spans the globe. We also have a God of justice. That Old Testament prophet Micah said, God tells you what is good, O mortal, and what is required of you, but to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. That is what we are to do as God's people. God tells us what's good, and we are to do those things, especially to do justice. We know that God responds to the prayers of the people who are oppressed, and that he calls us to be part of that response. It's easy, though, for us to be blinded to the injustice around us, especially when we are part of the culture in which it exists. As a white woman, I've never been afraid of police. I've found police to be helpful to me at many times in my life. And so police have never been a source of fear for me. But that's not true for an awful lot of people. As a white woman, it would be easy to be blinded by that part of our culture. But I'm aware that one of the cultural rituals that has become common is for black fathers to have the talk with their son. Now, I'm not talking about the talk about the birds and the bees. No, this is another talk. This is a talk about what you need to do when you encounter law enforcement, so that you stay alive through that encounter. The people who are trusted with protecting our citizens are the ones that we have to have our young black boys learn how to protect themselves against. Don't put your hands anywhere where it could be perceived as reaching for a weapon. Be sure to be respectful, even if they aren't respectful of you. Don't give them any reason to have to use force against you. Lots of tips that you wouldn't expect that a young boy should have to hear. But by being a young black boy, a young black man, a black man in our society, somehow that is perceived as being a threat. And so therefore, these discussions have become a normal rite of passage for young black boys in our culture. The way, though, that we can think about this culture is if we can step outside of it. Like I said, it's hard to recognize the culture when you're part of it, but if you can step outside that culture, you can see things with new eyes, with a fresh look at things. I got an email yesterday from one of our members, Robin Shenander, and she included in that email a link to her favorite reggae song. Now, quite honestly, I was surprised that Robin had a favorite reggae song. But I called her and talked with her and learned about it, And she told me that starting in the mid-1990s, she began traveling to Barbados on a regular basis. She went the first time and she just felt so welcome. The people were so warm, they were so passionate. She really enjoyed that island nation of Barbados. And so she went back many, many times. And over her times in Barbados, she became familiar with the culture, familiar with the people, and she developed a taste for reggae. And she developed a favorite reggae artist whose name is John King. She sent me this clip that's called How Many More, that was written by John King. As Robin explained, reggae is the music of social justice, and it raises themes that are important for what's going on in the day. The song How Many More was written in 1997 in response to a series of shootings that were happening in Barbados. And John King raises the questions, how many more shootings are there going to be? And it's actually done really as a prayer, asking God how many more, and asking God for this violence, this senseless violence, to stop. As I watched the video, it became clear to me that even though it was from a very different culture, some of the themes were universal. Everybody's mother wants their child to be safe. All of us want a fair chance at life. None of us want to be killed or shot or hurt just because of how others perceive us. All are God's beloved children. All of us have a role to play in bringing about justice. 10 days ago, from my kitchen table, I talked to you in a heartfelt way about our response to this killing of George Floyd. And I called us all to a time of prayer. And I truly believe in prayer. I believe that prayer changes things. I believe that God uses prayer to change our hearts, and God uses prayer to change us so that we can become change agents in God's world. So we use that prayer, the prayer of St. Francis, make me an instrument of your peace. And I believe that that is a perfect prayer for this time. But that prayer is not enough by itself. That prayer is a call to action, that we might become instruments of God's peace. So I ask you to open yourselves to becoming an instrument of God's peace. Open yourself to stepping outside your comfort zone. Get to know someone who looks and is different from you, someone who comes from a background different from what you're familiar with. As you get to know them, you'll learn things about them that you'll realize, oh, we have more in common than we ever expected. You'll become friends. A love may grow. God's love may flow between you. You may recognize that the color of their skin, the background they come from, all of that just creates that rich tapestry of interwoven people that are God's people throughout the world. As you listen to this song, which I've included the link for you here, I invite you to listen with new ears. Although it was written 23 years ago in a different time and a different place, it feels like it could have been written just this week for our time and place right here. Let those chords fill you. Let those words fill you so that you might become part of the answer to the question that John King asks. Amen.